Mike Florio joins us now because Tom Brady's going to have his hearing this week. I don't know if it's tomorrow or Thursday or tomorrow and Thursday. And Mike joins us on loan from Pro Football Talk. Help me with the process here. Brady goes in, Brady with the commissioner, the lawyers. How does this work?
Yeah, Commissioner, Brady, lawyers, and, the lawyers have an opportunity to present new evidence. In a classic appeal of a court ruling, you don't introduce new evidence. You make a decision based upon the evidence that previously was available and whatever precedent or principles apply to that. But in this case, Goodell's made it clear that he's willing to consider any new evidence from Tom Brady, and I think that was Goodell's way of saying, hey, if you change your mind about that whole phone and the text messages thing, maybe we can cut this suspension down by a couple of games. It's unknown whether or not Brady has taken him up on that offer, but I think they're going to go in there and they're going to attack this thing any way they can, trying to get Roger Goodell to realize that the Ted Wells report is flawed and that there isn't enough evidence to conclude that there was tampering with the footballs before the AFC Championship game, and that Brady had any idea what those guys were doing if they were doing anything they shouldn't have been doing.
How do you think this plays out, Mike?
Well, I don't think Roger Goodell is going to be able to find a way to reduce this to zero. We've seen what happens when it's believed that Roger Goodell doesn't go far enough in punishing someone. He almost loses his job when it's believed he doesn't go far enough. Now, when he goes too far, what happens is you go to court, you get it overturned, you get it reduced, and nobody ever says anything. So I think Goodell is still going to impose some sort of a punishment against Brady, force Brady to go to court, and get it overturned there. And if it gets overturned there, Goodell says, hey, I tried, and it's that darn court system that interfered yet again to tell me that I was wrong. But I don't care. I'd rather be wrong and stand on principle than be right and have people calling for me to get fired.
What if the commissioner says, let's make a deal here?
Well, I think they can make a deal. It's going to be a delicate thing because now you've got all the Patriots fans upset. You make a deal with Tom Brady, you're going to have all the other fans upset. You're going to have people looking for any way to criticize what Roger Goodell does, and that's really the problem here. Whatever he does, there will be people who criticize him. He's got to ignore all that, and he's got to do what's right for Brady, what's right under the circumstances, whatever the facts points to. I mean, that's the obligation here, to do the right thing, and that's why it takes a truly independent person who doesn't have all these other interests tied up in the outcome of this case. You need an independent voice to look at this and say, here's what we think the evidence showed, here's what we think happened, and here's what we think should happen going forward. And I think it's going to be impossible for Roger Goodell to set aside all of his other interests and make a decision based solely on what the evidence does or doesn't show here.
What's Brady's case? How's he going to argue this?
Well, I think, number one, you attack the Wells report. You attack the science of the Wells report. You attack the conclusions of the Wells report. The American Enterprise Institute had a report last week that kind of tears down the Wells report pretty sufficiently. I'd introduce that as exhibit number A, and I would beat down everything I could about the Wells report. And then you fall back on the idea there's no evidence that Tom Brady knew what was going on, whatever it was that was going on. That's the thing. We don't know what was going on. And here's where Ted Wells really failed, Dan. I mean, if this guy is as good of a lawyer as the NFL would have us believe, he should have gotten those two guys in the room, John Yastrzemski and Jim McNally, the guys who exchanged those goofy text messages. You get them in a room and you get one of them to confess. I mean, if the high-priced $1,000 an hour lawyers are going to get a guy like John Yastrzemski or Jim McNally to admit to what they did. There's got to be a way to get them to admit to it, and they didn't. That would have been the easiest way to prove that something happened here. Instead, they had to concoct a statistical analysis through scientific evidence that is deeply flawed. So that's the problem. There isn't enough evidence to conclude that the Patriots tampered with the footballs before the AFC title game. There's stuff in that report that's troubling, but I think Ted Wells and his team failed to get to the bottom of exactly what was going on with those text messages between Yastrzemski and McNally.
Talking to Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk. While I have you, the Des Bryant situation of holding out, how serious?
Well, he's got to convince the Cowboys he's serious about missing regular season games. They don't think he is. They think it's a bluff, and they think when push comes to shove, he'll show up, make his $12.8 million, not give up $750,000 a week. It's the same reason that the lockout worked for the owners and the same reason a strike fails for the players. Players don't want to miss game checks. So they think Des Bryant's going to show up. He's got to convince them before July 15, that's the deadline for doing a long-term deal, that he means it, that he will stay away, that he will miss regular season games. They don't believe that he will.
And then Russell Wilson's situation?
I think Russell Wilson's going to play out the last year of his contract. Unless the Seahawks decide to pay him what he wants, he seems to be determined to take $1.5 million for this year and put the Seahawks in the exact same predicament that the Ravens were in a couple of years ago with Joe Flacco. Whether they win the Super Bowl or not, the Seahawks will be in a tough spot here because they either sign him to a market deal, they use the exclusive franchise tag, which is going to be about $25 million for next year, and it works out to $98 million over 3 years, or they use the non-exclusive franchise tag, and then a team like the Browns is going to swoop in, pay him a market value deal, and gladly give up 2 first-round draft picks. They're going to be in a mess come February if Russell Wilson decides to not take whatever they're going to offer between now and then.
What's he want to be paid?
Well, I think he views himself as the best quarterback in the NFL. I think if you attach him to a lie detector test, that's what will come out. I don't even know if you have to attach him to that. I think he would admit, when you read between the lines of some of the things he said, he regards himself as a guy who should be paid as much as anybody in the NFL. The challenge for the Seahawks is going to be to get him to tap into that Go Hawks mentality. You know, every interview, every press conference, every media availability, he finishes with Go Hawks. He's all about team. Well, taking $25 million a year is going to make it hard to put a team around you. That's where they have to get Russell Wilson to crack and realize he's got to leave some money behind so they can continue to put great guys around him.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right, see you, buddy.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk.